Hello, welcome back to the Caring Conversation studio, live at the Care Show at the Birmingham NEC. Right, so we have another volunteer, victim, whatever you would like to call you, for our studio chat. Daniel?
Dan's fine.
Dan's fine, right, lovely. Do you want to introduce yourself? Tell us who you are and what you do.
Yeah, sure. So my name's Dan Jenkins. I'm a commercial director for Wagada Digital. We're a full-service digital agency. We've got offices in London, St Albans and Cheltenham. We offer digital marketing, employer branding, website development, and we're HubSpot partners as well. We work extensively with brands throughout the sector. And yeah, we're exhibiting here as well today at the Care Show.
Perfect. So we're going to talk a bit about the sort of future of the workforce.
Yeah.
So obviously, the proposition for a potential employee is a really interesting one. It's difficult to get right. There's lots of sort of fundamental things that you need to do to underpin that. But I think we'll talk about that kind of top level of stuff, how you attract people in. So, I don't know, what's good in recruitment at the moment?
It's a really good question because the face of recruitment has changed exponentially over the last few years. I mean, there's no doubt that COVID had an enormous impact. I think there was a lack of trust, even from some people going into the profession, and I think there's been an impact on the general funnel, in that regard. I think what we're seeing now is a very different landscape to even the last couple of years. I think that people expect more from the workplace, and that's not just within the care sector, that's throughout the country and the world at large. So we're sort of in this fight, really, where we've got a balance between, salary, wage, and literal kind of pounds, shillings and pence, but then also an organisation's values, what it can offer people, the way of life, the community that person's going into. And we've gone through periods where any one of those two separate things have been more prominent, and now I think we're in a world where people are expecting it all. So we've got a cost of living crisis, so there's an expectation in terms of, as I say, salary expectations and the practical side of things, but then also making sure that they're going into a setting or an employer that shares their values and is going to give them the type of opportunity that they want from within the sector. So I think it's very challenging at the moment for brands to stand out in that marketplace.
And I think ultimately when you break that down, it's about being a good company to work for. So I think people get a bit kind of, confused about the whole, should we pay them less and give them more benefits? Yeah. It's not about the, this app that they get that means that they can get cheaper cinema tickets. It's about the holistic approach to say, right, we compensate people well, we're flexible, we understand when people have issues and we work with them, and we have good systems in place which mean that if they want to take sick leave, they can do that. If they want if they want to change shifts, they can do that. So I see that a lot. I own a coffee shop as well as this business, and mostly 18-year-olds. They want flexibility.
Yeah.
That's what they want, and so we give that to them, right? And it's difficult because sometimes that means going, okay, you don't have to work tomorrow.
That's right.
Yeah. So
I think you're absolutely right, and I think what that stems from is really understanding your workforce. Understanding your team, understanding who you want to employ, who you want to have within the organisation, and what their needs really are. You do see some organisations that offer sort of perks and bonuses that actually don't resonate with prospects and with those that they would like to employ. And I think that you've really got to look at that overarching picture of what a good workplace means to people, and then make sure that you're able to effectively promote that and position yourself as being able to offer that, so that when it comes to it, people are either thinking of choosing you over another provider, or even going into this sector and choosing you over a completely different sector. So yeah, it's a tightrope walk.
So when you're kind of creating branding packages or recruitment packages for companies, what sort of process do you go through?
So I think there's a lot. I think one of the most important things is to really nail down what's called your employer value proposition, your EVP. So, what's our promise? What's our pledge as an employer? What is it that we are offering that's going to make us stand out from the crowd? And that can be a single strapline, a single sentence, a statement that you kind of hang your hat off. That can be quite a big exercise. In order to get that right, you might want to engage the wider members of the team, find out what it means to them to be a part of the brand. Once you've got
I think
that,
don't do that yourself as the business owner. Yeah, get the team that work for you to do that. Yeah.
It's absolutely not a kind of a solo or an inward-looking exercise. It's a much more open exercise to really pin that down. And you'd be amazed what you get back. Team members can come out with things that you wouldn't have even, considered or expected. But once you've got that employer value proposition, you can hang everything off that. Your whole campaign, your whole approach, what are the messages that you're putting out on social channels? How are you developing your job listings, your advertising in this regard? So I think that's your kind of your first stepping stone, if you like, towards a much wider journey in terms of then, making sure that you become an employer of choice and that you're positioning yourself as well.
As ultimately, I think you do need to advertise the job roles, right? You need to understand who you're looking to employ, and create that job role. Obviously, there's things that you can't say, like, I want someone who's 55 to 65. But I think if you understand that's what you're looking for, you can do that in the sort of advertising.
And interestingly, I think a very easy and common mistake then is when we write job ads, whether that's for online listings and portals, or if it's for your own job listings, or indeed platforms like LinkedIn, it's very natural to talk about ourselves as an employer, to talk about who we are, this is who we are, this is our home or setting or organisation, and we talk very much about we do this is what we are, this is what we're about. And actually there's an exercise in completely flipping that on the head, in making sure that you're talking to the reader. Who's the person? How are you going to attract them? Say more about you. This is what we're going to offer you. This is what we expect from you, because a lot of roles within this sector are going to be very, very challenging, and that's sort of okay, and that's actually exciting. So it's about how you effectively demonstrate that as well, so that you attract people who are ready and up for the challenge, and that you don't kind of sugarcoat it in your job listings. So those actual job listings are difficult, I think, to get right, but again, there's a big exercise in how you do that effectively.
Yeah, I think ultimately, there's a lot of there's a sort of trope around, people get paid the same amount to work in Lidl. It's like, well, you can't compare the job. Even if you get paid the same amount, it's much more fulfilling working in social care, just because, like you said, it's more challenging. And some people don't want to be bored at work, and they don't want to have to do that. So I think it's about creating that proposition that's correct for the audience, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think as well, I know a number of providers can often struggle, and it's interesting actually, because we work within the early years sector as well, which is obviously both ends of the age scale, but they face such similar challenges, especially from a recruitment perspective. And what's very interesting that we see in both elderly care and early years care is the challenge from the point of often interview offer. So the drop-off between the offer of an interview and those then actually attending the interview, and then sometimes the drop-off from that point in terms of job offer, and so when you start to think about it like that, there's so much valuable information and content that we're speaking about here in terms of what an employer can offer. And there's a really important consideration in terms of how you're communicating that message to those that are already engaged with your organisation or your setting. So are you sending them these gentle reminders? Are they getting strong email communications from you? Are you reminding them at all those points in the recruitment journey why they should choose you? Because chances are they're going to be interviewing for other organisations as well. You need to make sure that you're front of mind during that process, that when they're sat with almost literally two offers, one in front of the other, what's the edge? Because it might not be salary. The salary might even be less. But if the opportunity is stronger and the proposition is stronger, you become the employer of choice at whatever level that individual is.
I had an interesting conversation with a friend of mine recently who was applying for various jobs, and one of them, he got the contract through and challenged something in the contract with the HR team, and they were really rude to him. He's like, well, I'm not going to work there. Like, if I can't just have a sensible... the lady apparently was just like, well, why are you even asking me this question? It's like, well, people expect this now, right? They expect that.
They do. And I think that there's an expectation that there's going to be an experience, a certain brand experience that they are going to get at every point in the journey. I was once working with an organisation where a customer fed back and they said, you know what, you're the living, breathing version of your leaflet. And I thought that was the nicest bit of feedback, because it's the fact that we talked a little bit about employer value proposition, who you are. If you're purporting to be something as an organisation, to be engaging, challenging, warm, friendly, or any of these phraseology, make sure that the team live and breathe that. There's a whole internal marketing piece there. So, in that example, perhaps, that stakeholder hadn't bought in enough to his own or her own organisation's personal branding to make sure that they were the living, breathing version of the leaflet. And I think that's massively important.
Have you got a quick tip you can share with someone who's looking at their branding proposition? What should they do? What's a kind of top line, something someone should do?
Yeah, so I guess something top line would be, it's broad, but I would say think outside the box. Like, think creatively, think differently. I think that it's very easy to warm to kind of common buzz phrases and quite standard terminology. this is a very competitive marketplace, a very competitive landscape. You know, we work with a particular brand that, for example, their TikTok channel completely breaks down any misconceptions about what it's like to be in a care home, and it gets a huge amount of engagement and positive energy. So I do think, you know, have a little think, what really is it that sets you apart? What is it that makes you different? You know, do your exercises around that with the wider team, and then think a bit more outside the box, and even in a slightly provocative manner, about how you can really get a message out there that's going to cut through the noise and doesn't just fall into the path that lots of other providers might be doing.
I've heard car boot sales. If you're recruiting, go to the local car boot sale, buy a table, put a stand up, give away some flyers, some free bits and pieces, promotes the home, or the home care service, and you can recruit people. Yeah,
I honestly think word of mouth, you cannot underestimate the power of word of mouth.
Yeah.
There's a lot of talk about the conversations that happen at the school gates. I think when you have, care homes, as an example, they're very, geographic specific. They might be hyper local, or you might actually be dealing in quite a small sort of pool from those that can access the settings. So, yeah, think about those face-to-face communities. Think as well about those online communities. I know a lot of brands get a lot more benefit from posting to kind of community groups on channels like Meta, Facebook, rather than just purely, on the organic stream. So have a look at how you can think differently about reaching and resonating, and also think about if you need to have different channels. Do you have a customer-facing social presence and then an employment social presence? We've built employment websites so that a brand has a specific recruitment website, as well as a B2C, a direct-to-customer website. So, have a little think about, how that whole landscape looks for you as an organisation.
I think sort of Facebook local groups are good.
Exactly.
It can be quite tricky to kind of, it's got to be good content, otherwise it just won't make it. I mean, my local Facebook group gets 12 posts a day, so unless it's interesting, you're not going to get any reach with it. So it's quite, it's not what it used to be in terms of, you need to use all the tricks in the book to get to across,
and there's a big push now, and you'll know this, in terms of kind of short form content and video content and sort of the value of that. So think a little bit about what it is that you're posting on these channels. I would always say quality over quantity, and you've got to remember that it might be the second, third, fourth, fifth touch point. They might see something on a community group. That person is probably already aware of your setting or your organisation, and it might be the fifth engagement that they've had with the brand. So have a little think about that as well, and that we don't lead with too many kind of sales messages, and it's more as an opportunity to demonstrate the values of the organisation and what you're about. So again, it's about really thinking about a bit broadly about how you create social content.
And I agree with that, quality over quantity, but I don't think quality necessarily means expensive.
It doesn't.
I think it just means thought through.
Correct.
So like we create a lot of content for social media, and most of it's very cheap to make, but it's thought through. So it's like it's part of a link to a campaign, or so a lot of what I do with this stuff is that I tag people in things. So I create bits of content, involve other people, so it automatically creates a kind of cycle of sharing straight away. We share it internally in our teams to make sure that we're really good.
I think authenticity, again, that is a bit of a buzzword, but having that kind of authentic glass box culture on social media that sort of opens a door to who you are, as you say, doesn't necessarily mean overly polished and expensive. But it does mean well thought out and well crafted, and making sure that it's supporting a bigger message. And I think that's what quality really is in that context. Yeah.
Perfect. Right. Thank you very much for coming into the studio. I hope you have a successful couple of days at the Care Show. Stand
L61, Wagon and Digital.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
Lovely to meet you. Cheers. All the very best.
Cheers. Right, we'll be back shortly with another interview.